Hey, welcome back everyone. So in today's video, I'm going to give you some of my main suggestions and techniques for creating this type of art using Clip Studio Paint. If you like the video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's jump on in. Alright, so in this one, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm actually going to play the video time-lapse on the right and then talk and explain about, just some of the process, and I'm picking from some of the questions that you guys were kind enough to answer back on the post that I shared. So it gives me some general direction to take. So basically, I'm going to start playing this, and this was a time-lapse that's exported out of Clip Studio. It's actually started in reverse, as I always do. And I just quickly rough in a pose. I start to refine it, and there's parts of it that I'm already looking at and going, well, it's not really right, but maybe I can work through it. I was going to do a line art version, but then pretty early on, you see I start changing it to paint. Now right there, I want to explain a little bit of that. So you see I didn't go in and tighten up every bit of the line art before I jumped into painting. And so let me go over here now and see if I hopefully salvaged enough of those layers to show you that process. I'll toggle a bunch of these off. See, it's all grayscale, and I'm also using clipping masks. I'll talk about those more in a bit because these are really powerful for painting. I added some texture to this moon-like shape, and then I didn't like it. I wanted it a little more simplified. There's a bunch of different directions I kind of went with this, so you'll see some of that. So here, this is a little bit advanced past where we're at over here to the right? So I'll continue it on, but what I wanted to hopefully show is that I didn't clean it up very much. You've got so many ways to edit the paint work. You kind of just need a loose starting point, something to guide you, but not. I think of it in the way of you want it to guide you, but not constrict you. Now, I guess that depends on how you are as an artist. If you don't feel that way, I feel that if I overly define the line art, that I'm going to be less likely to experiment as I progress through the painting. But there's times where that refined line art makes it a lot easier to keep moving forward as well. So it's something you have to experience for yourself and see where you're at there. But notice what I'm doing is I'm blocking in lines and then I'm blending them back. And I'll just show you a quick little demo of the process. So I basically take the darker pencil brush that I like. Let's see here. These windows are always a little funky, and I got this multiple. Let me just do a test layer over here. I've got multiple things here where I normally would just have this all as a Clip Studio interface. So let's just say that I'm, just trying to shade some spherical part of the body. Well, I guess I want it to look a little bit like something we're working on. So let me just say it's like the shoulder shape here, right? So I've got this shoulder shape, whatever I want to see as a shoulder shape, something like that. And then I go to start shading it. A lot of times I will just block in some kind of lines like this. You can see it all through here. I like doing this because it makes me feel like I'm traditionally shading something. And then I'll just go to a blending stump, and that's actually mixed in with I use the liquify as well. They just added this in the new version. It's actually not that great, but it's better than not having one. So blur right there, or no, I'm sorry, blend. I guess I mix these up, but usually blend. And then I just want to be set to white here. Blending stump, blend. Why is it not blending right? Well, it's putting down way too much initial paint. So let's go into the settings here and figure out why. Because honestly, I started painting this, or I painted this all on the iPad Pro, and my settings should be calibrated the same, but it's probably density of paint is way too high. And color stretch, I like that to be up. Amount of paint, I really want this to be just a basic blending stump, not something that's applying paint. So that's probably where the settings lie. Let me try again. I'm going to really show you the way that I keep going back and forth. So I kind of get it to a medium value, and then I come back and I lighten that up. And a lot of times I'll draw in shapes, almost like I'm cell shading, like this. A really strong hot spot in the middle. Go back to the blending stump. And what I like about this this way of doing things is you can really push the paint around. So you want to get your settings just right where you feel you can push the value right to where you want, and you start creating shapes, in a sense, is the way I look at it. Like, I want to be able to create the shapes that I'm looking for. I don't want to put some paint down and then after I get done, everything has to be a happy accident because I'm not in control. That's, you know, it's okay to get those happy accidents Bob Ross style, but at the same time, you want to envision something, implement it, and then either learn from it or feel that you accomplished it. So you gotta, you know, you really gotta get the control of your brushes just right. You know, so I might do something like that. And I just keep going on and say, well, what's it look like with color? Well, it needs to be darker. Now, another thing, and I'll get into this in a bit, I apply the color over top with blending modes, and then I go right back to painting into the grayscale. So there's a little example of how I would, you know, maneuver. It doesn't look like a shoulder from back here now, but it's supposed to be a shoulder. Actually, his shoulder doesn't even look like a shoulder. So let's progress on. And so just still drawing and refining, but also jumping right into blending. You see when you see it suddenly move, that's because I edited the size of something. I felt really awkward about the proportions in this one. Like the head, it's weird. Like to me, when I'm looking at the artwork up close, the head was fine. When I pull back and I make it really small on the screen, the head is massive. I have a hard time gauging proportions like that. The hand is massive up front there, you know. But again, these are things that, you know, you may or may not see. It's just things that I'm critiquing about my own work, and I think it's important to do that. But when you see it move, that's what I'm doing. I'm changing proportions. So you see a lot of sketching, a lot of little blending there. Really just trying to build up the value, but also trying to pinpoint the overall shape and look of things like the facial feature and the anatomy, and really trying to figure out if it's just right. Now, right here, I let me pause this again just so you know what I'm doing. So I jumped in there and I threw in a value layer. You can see if we scrub back just a little bit there. See, I dropped that in. I was like, oh, now we're getting Daredevil, that nice crimson red or whatever. And so, but as I did that, I'm like, just the values are all too harsh, dark to light, you know, obviously. So that's why I'm jumping in here and I'm blocking in a solid shape. I'm using the G pen, so it's a solid ink shape. I'm blocking that in and basically backing the tonal values that I've created. But I also use clipping mask, and that's why you'll see at first there's some sketch lines on the outside. Where's that at? Right there, you can see there's rough lines on the outside. But then as you get to about here, see how they disappear? So let me explain why that is. So we come over here, and basically, let me just make this bigger as I'm explaining this part. So we get to that portion of the painting, and I'm like, all right, I got to start cleaning it up. You see there's these other layers, but really they're not, they're just out of order from the way that it was done. So we get to here, I block this in, get rid of this one and this one for now. And what it is this is that, and you see I did a poor job of it. I really should have cleaned that up. See all these little mishaps in the you know, because I'm using the G pen. If the anti-aliasing, where is it at? I'm in darker pencil, my bad. G pen right here. See that this has to be solid, but I don't like the funky edge, almost like a pixelated edge you get there. So I tend to use it softer, but you have to go back and clean it up better than that. So just keep that in mind, because this does affect the coloring that you're going to add over top with clipping mask. So you really want to clean this area up. And then over top of this, you know, this is obviously more advanced into the painting at this point, but what this is, these are just values over top. You see it doesn't even show up because I've got them set to clip. Now let me show you how to do that and why you do that. So first I'm going to take this off. I'm going to go to layer settings, clip to layer below. I'm going to take that off. Look how messy it is all around there. Now you can see all those various edits I did and how messy I am. But I didn't need to worry about that, because as long as this is set to clip, it's taking the data from that layer, it's making that the perimeter shape, it's confining all the value and paints and colors, and everything that's clipped to this base layer will work in that regard. And so it takes all this And again, we go back to layer settings, clip to layer below, and boom, nice and clean. But again, remember to really clean up that base layer. It just makes sense. Now, again, the neat thing about this is every time I add something over top, each one of these being set to clip now confines it into that area. And each layer over top, I can set various blending modes to combine these together. So let me not jump the gun too much because I know we're already past this part of the video. Let me play this some more for you. And you're going to see areas too where it looks like it slows right down. Chances are I'm making some edits that either are smaller because it doesn't show zooming in. So, like right here, I can see I'm working on the side of his eye. I had a little bit of difficulty figuring out the shape of the mask that I wanted to see. I always tend to do this with characters like Batman, Daredevil, anybody wearing a mask that, there might be some shape in the mask that is distorted, some depth to it. Do I put in seam lines? Do I implement more of that, less of that? So I bounce around a little bit with that, and that's kind of what I was doing there. Now I get in the wrinkles, and the wrinkles are nice and easy in painting. It's like a highlight on the top, closer to the light source, a shadow on the other side, obviously, but then also the trick to that is really just shade on the shadow side, shade around the way that it affects the neighboring form, whether it be the muscle, in this case all anatomy, right? So it's like, or against another fold. So it's just that back and forth from light to dark. And I guess I can explain that part too, because I'm trying to get the benefit of showing you some and painting at the same time to really explain the process better. Yes, and I can see now that once I don't have these other colors to back it up, I just really see a lot of the flaws that I should have got in here and really cleaned up. So, like right here, right here. So if you look here, we've got. See, I'm still getting too much paint. Almost like I don't want any paint. I just want to take the paint that's on the canvas and move that around. So I just knock that all the way down. But see, then it doesn't move the, let's just take amount of paint all the way down, density of paint all the way down, but not the brush density. There we go. Also, you got to be careful with locked transparent pixels when you're trying to blend because it can affect the painting process a little bit negatively. So right here is what I'm trying to explain with the shadows. It's pretty easy, but I know a lot of people struggle with this. Is just get in your light source. So let's go back to the pencil. I'll select white here. And I can brush in a little bit of light source here. A little bit of light source here. We'll say there. Hit X on the keyboard to go to black. A little bit here. Also, I really bump down the opacity of the pencil as I use it to paint. Even the density. I want it real nice and light so I can build up some values. But what the part I meant is it's really important to get these wrinkles to affect the neighboring muscle. So as this form right here comes up like this, kind of see that? As it does that, I need to shadow on this side and kind of, I'm thinking more about this form right here as I introduce this wrinkle, and that's why I have it bending up and around as well. It's real easy to say, well, let's just make these wrinkles go straight across. And all of a sudden you flatten out this particular part of the form. So it's good to think about the neighboring forms as you do this. And just play around with the value. Now, one of the reasons why this probably looks so messy at this stage is because I've already built up some different parts of the paintwork over top. So as I drop in the other, really wish Clip Studio wouldn't do that, where it disappears if you slightly miss the the window. So you can see by adding that vivid kind of red, it really does cover up a lot of it. but I still see a lot of flaws. I definitely could have went in here and did a lot more to this. So that's something else to think about. That, you know, a lot of times I will jump in kind of early on and drop in the color, but then as I progress, you know, it might be more helpful for me to stay into the value stage a bit longer, or at least toggle this on and off so I can really clean up the work. But again, that's the way I want to show the wrinkles there. It's pretty easy, but always keep that neighboring form in mind, and I think you'll come up with something a lot better. So let's keep playing this forward. So you see I'm brushing the anatomy back and forth, so I totally wiped out that lower part of the forearm. I do that a few times in different areas because it's just not feeling right, and that's how it goes. Like, if it's not right, then, you know, it's better to, instead of to keep trying to rework it, sometimes it's better to just paint right over it and start fresh, and usually you'll you know, get to the, you know, get past the problem quicker by thinking that way. And same thing with adding the lower abdominal area. I put work in progress because I was actually going to share it and get some feedback. And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna get through it and not worry about that. But yeah, so with the lower abdominal area, added that as another grayscale first. So you do have to remember, as you're working this way with clipping masks, that you want to keep adding to the base layer. So although you couldn't really see that, that's what I did here. So I dropped that in as another shape, painted it all solid, and then everything's clipped to that. You know, everything from the logo, the face, the shadow on the face. There's a highlight on the face. So this is actually, all three of these really should be labeled. They're all to the face. You get the base color of the face, which I actually painted on. Or I'm sorry, just the color of the face, because the value is the shadowing, obviously. Color of the face, shadow, which is a little bit of has some blue in there for the shadow, and then a little bit of red in there to kind of make the skin look a little bit more flesh tone, and then obviously the red that we all know and love from Daredevil there. So more wrinkles, more you know, secondary details, just kind of trying to pinpoint, you know, what I can do here to make it look better. So you can see there, I started to draw a background, and then immediately go back to working on Daredevil's suit. Basically, I'm avoiding the background because I'm not sure about what I want to see there yet. And I start to sketch in some different ideas. I start to render portions of them. But I think that it's really important to pay attention to your workflow and realize when you do certain things like that and you're not committing to it, you're kind of dancing around the subject a little bit. I definitely feel that when I go to draw backgrounds, and if I wanted this background to really work, I'd go into it head first, and I'd really go find some good reference, and it's a way to commit more. So essentially, if you find yourself kind of making these loops around a specific area in your work, go get the reference, go create a mood board with, you know, in this case, the cemetery, get the angle that you want, maybe the lighting that you want. It's almost like, because you commit to it by going and finding various references, at least for me anyways, and maybe it'll work for you, is that it seems to propel me to, you know, or guide me through the rest of the process and keep me on point. But if I just do this thing where I'm just drawing in various ideas, I'm not saying I can't ultimately find what I'm looking for, because there's plenty of illustrations where I managed to do that. But I'm a lot more likely to not only get there, but to get there faster, is if I just stop what I'm doing, I go look at some different reference, I get inspired by something, and then just come back, knock it out, get it done. Where, you know, here I'm just basically sketching things and playing around and hoping that I find my mark. So, but I think that's where a lot of times drawing fan art is a lot more of a problematic way to create, because most people, you're drawing from a script, you're told what to draw, and that really kind of helps keep you on point, which is a good thing. So here, you know, back on this, just adding in more suit details, blending things back and forth. I also soften up some of the details as well. So another technique I want to show you real quick, because the way that I've been painting this up until now in that part of the video has all been painting in shapes and blending them back, which I really love that approach. To me, it gives me a nice combination of a stylistic comic book art, but a painterly version of it. But there are areas where, now that I'm looking at this isn't the last version. That's the problem. Yeah, that's what it is. Because that hand does not look the same. So you can see even right here, as it progressed forward, I blend that all back. I soften it up. And that's the part I want to show you real quick, is that, yeah, so this isn't the very final, so my bad on that. But I can still show you. It's not a big deal. But I would go right back to the value stage, because remember, without this, it's basically the missing link. Like, it's just gray, right, with a red overlay up here. Set to, by the way, overlay. Okay, so let me show you the difference. So multiply was too dark for what I wanted, which for a night scene, that actually probably would be more on point. But I use overlay, right? So I can go back to the values right here. And so what I did here is I just took like a soft airbrush, and let's start with dark and see what it does. Let's see how that affects the value right there. And I could generate a selection if I need to. Actually kind of like this polyline one. So say I wanted to, work on the shape of the hand while I do this, right? I can grab all through here. I can ignore all of this, probably to about here. Something like that. And so what it does is this edge is going to be protected by the clipping mask over there. This edge, I see it's a bit mucky. I could fix that up. So now what I would do is just play around with different values here. Say, okay, what if I lighten this up with a soft airbrush? And then as I do that and I blend, I can really control these hard edges that I'm getting. I can also hit Command Shift I, invert the mask, and I can paint this other side or blend this other side. Maybe that line's a bit too, obstructive or, gaudy or whatever. So you really take advantage of these selections. You can just flip them back and forth, but also use the soft brush to blend back some of these areas. So, like I said, I generally just keep going back and forth with the, the pencil or the smooth watercolor. I didn't use that a whole lot in this one, so I don't really feel the need to show you that one, but it's an effective brush as well. But I just go back and forth, painting in these values, and just looking at like highs and lows, and I hit X on the keyboard. Maybe a little bit more opacity here. Some of these wrinkles in there. And so I think the nice thing about using a very low opacity is you can really see the stuff come together. Versus if you're going, kind of strong opacity, you kind of fly by the desired result. You're kind of, backing up and redoing it over and over until you get what you want. But it's up to you. One of the drawbacks, though, to doing it this way, where you see me doing this low opacity, is I really should be trying to draw in these cleaner shapes. Let me show you what I mean there. Because unless you like more texture, which I definitely could have got away with a lot more texture on this particular painting, probably should have added more texture. Because it really does kind of breathe another level of life into this stuff. But see, I've got to kind of fix a lot of these little random mark makings if I'm not digging the texture there. And the way I like to get this brush working, this blending stump, is if I want, for instance, if I want to bring this shadow up here, I want to be able to quickly push some of that value. It looks like color data again because we get the red overlay, but it's value. If I want to bring that value up real quick and then blend it, I can do that all with this blending stump. And that's really what I like to do, the process I like to take for this particular style. Again, if I need to fix an edge while I'm here, I can also save this selection. I didn't do that in here at all. You can see that I just kept defining selections as I needed them, and that's probably why it's pretty messy up close here. But let's see, if you go to select, pretty sure you can convert to a selection layer, and it'll make this green selection there. It looks kind of weird. All you have to do is turn the visibility off, and I think you right click, or you probably command click. Let me try that. Command click. Yep. And then it gives you that selection again. You got to make sure though, I just, once I establish these, and I'll name it like hand selection or whatever, double click, name it hand selection, but I'll just go there, and as I need it, say it's not selected, I'll hit command tap there, but I'm still on this layer. So that's another quick way to work. And again, really take advantage of the fact that you can easily flip this with command shift I. You won't see it do much. You see this little sidecar bar move over. But it did flip, and you'll know once you go to paint. And yeah, really effective way to get in there and fix your edges. Be careful of stuff like this, so I didn't extend that selection over. So I have to just make sure that I blend this. And I would recommend you blend in both ways as well, not just side to side. You see, it's starting to get that little bit of a painterly look. And again, if I want to soften these up, really take advantage of using the soft airbrush. I wouldn't use it a whole lot like this. I mean, you can, but you got to be very careful. It'll give you some weird artifacts. But I would use it in areas like this, really trying to round out the overall hand, soften up some of these harsher transitions, and I can go back and forth and do that. So yeah, there's lots of applications where that works out really well. And then let's see, what else? I think that's about it. The rain is pretty simple. I just drew across it with brush strokes. I think I used the pencil at a more opacity, and then I put a blur on it, which I used Gaussian blur, I believe. So that's how I did the little rain droplets in that. And I put the same blur on the moon-like shape. So you see I started to drop in some different shapes there. I added some texture, but then ultimately decided not to go with that. And so that's how we get to relatively the end result. Again, this isn't the very final. You can see there's a little bit more refinement in this one than there is in that one, but not much. And then also, so just any of the general questions that I got from sharing this piece, one of which was, what brushes used. We kind of covered that, right? So the main brushes were the dark pencil, the G pen for drawing and editing the shape. I did use some smooth watercolor, but not much at all. But this one right here, there are paintings where I tend to use that more, but really the main one I used was the blending stump right there. So you can see all those settings. You can copy those down. These might vary based upon your driver settings for your drawing device, because I painted this entirely on the iPad Pro, and that's one of the reasons why, if you zoom up, I have these little artifacts and hiccups. And they're not as prevalent in this final one, but they're still there. Once I can see it on a bigger screen, that's when you zoom in, you see all the flaws. So keep that in mind. You want to check it on your various screens, just like you want to check color, saturation. So one of the questions that somebody had posted was, I get my work tends to be too saturated, then I share it on my accounts, it's overly saturated. I've battled that for years. You just have to you got to find a happy medium to go in there and, in this case, you're going to play with the base color, but after you flatten it, you can also go into, and I can even do this on this one layer. So see, I'm in the overlay layer here, and I can go to, so right here you can go to edit, tonal correction, and you can adjust all sorts of things. Mainly this one is the one I use the most, and of course it pops up on one of the other screens. So bring this down, and I can push back the saturation. I usually mess with the saturation and the intensity at the same time to really try to play around with, maybe I want it darker and less saturated. Almost like he's in the, more in the night. I do some blue shadows or blue lights, I guess, as well against the suit would look pretty cool. So you see that does pretty well. So that's dropping the saturation, also dropping the luminosity. You got to be careful playing with the hue. If you're kind of close to your color, then you can manipulate this. But I would use this more for effects. So say I wanted to introduce that light I was telling you about, I could copy this layer and I could erase it back. Let's say, let's erase it back all the way to where this is just hitting the back of the character. Something like that. And so now I can play with this effect because I've basically isolated, you're not seeing it over here because of the clipping mask, but it's just on the back of the character. And I can go back into here, edit, tonal correction, and I can play with this slider now, and I can drop in some color effects. It could be like a little bit of a reddish light, some green. I was thinking blue, but that might not be. And I could also bump up the luminosity here as well. I'm trying to get it a bit brighter. And a lot of times you can make something look more dramatic and more intense by doing this. And you see it was pretty quick to introduce that. Now, in all honesty, I would probably just brush it in, but there's times when, you know, you just want to try different methods. You want to sit here and, the neat thing about this is you can try a bunch of different colors. So you can go into tonal correction and color balance as well. I'll set it to halftone. And then you can really play around with these different color sliders as well. Now, part of what's negatively impacting it is it's also reacting against the red right there. So I could probably get in there and erase back some of that red. I'm not going to do that. Or another way, I could just take this, set this to normal mode, and lock transparent pixels. Just brush in some blue here. And then we can go on and play with the blending modes. And I want to say, yeah, we need them to blend with it, but we probably want to get the red out of the way to have the right effect. Let's see what we get here. Glow dodge, kind of crazy. Yeah, that's too much. Overlay. That's not bad. That's kind of cool. It looks dramatic, I guess. Or cinematic is what I think is what I was going for. But you see lots of options there. And basically, it's just making it look a lot more almost realistic. Where I wanted to go for this overly bright, vivid kind of effect, cartoony or animated with a mix of realistic style. But you can see by doing something like this, you start to get a lot more of a nighttime or realistic Daredevil. And again, you could just take that as far as you need to with blending modes and different overlays. But again, remember that through edit, you can really manipulate your overly saturated stuff. Now the problem is if you're having overly saturated images from device to device, you have to test it, save it over to the other device and look at it. And a lot of times I have to sit on that for a bit, a couple hours at least, sometimes overnight, then come back and view it and then go, oh, okay, yeah, I see the flaw now. I have to do that with my art as well. But even just the coloring, and again, I definitely face that. It's like all of my different devices have slightly different color gamuts, and yeah, it's just something you have to deal with. Okay, so one final technique I wanted to show you, because again, if you notice, this is still different. The head is smaller on this this rendition than it is here. And so this is part of the problem of when you introduce too much into your designs. It's like, okay, I get to a certain area, and then how do I fix it without repainting? Say I want to change the size of his head, and I want to repaint all that, right? That's another neat thing about these clipping masks, because all I have to do is I go to the bottom layer. First I'm going to try it with shift, and I think that'll work just fine. But I'm going to grab everything that's referenced through these clipping masks all the way up. And so to me, this is one of the really the most powerful aspects of digital art in general. But using clipping masks, and not every software allows you to do this. So I want to say Clip Studio might be one of the only ones that does it this well. So let's try it. Command T, scale the head down, and notice how everything scales in place. I mean, that's just super cool. Very effective. So also what I like to do here, I should have zoomed back first. I'll leave the selection in place, and I'm going to zoom back because I want to make sure that I check it from a distance. I always tend to do better with proportions if I work from a distance. So I think that's about right. I could probably even go a touch smaller, but I think that's a lot better than it was. And then we can deselect that. We can hit Command Z. And yeah, as soon as I do that, I notice that it's just the head was way too big. But that's, again, one of the really cool features of this is that you can implement all these different effects over top of this base layer and then still manipulate it as needed. And then say, you know, you maneuver this and you get some artifacts. Well, it's still pretty easy to clean up. I can go to the base layer here. I can select the G pen, set the transparent, and I can change the edge of the paintwork. You know, that's one of the final things I do anyways. I'll go through and you can blur some of your edges. You know, I tend to do a last cleanup, but and I did this all throughout. So the time lapse probably doesn't show it as well, but I did that constantly through the illustration. Is, you know, just changing, you know, the shape of the perimeter selection as I go. So it does two things. It improves the quality of the end result of the art, but it also gives you that you know, ability to select and keep all your stuff contained in that clipping mask. Super powerful feature. So you'll see me using that a lot more. And now that I've changed the colors on this, I think I actually like it more. So I'll be going back and editing the final version. But that's really it. So hopefully today's video has been good for you. Sorry that there's a bit of clunkiness going back and forth from everything, but I wanted to hopefully give you some new content that is, you know, just a bit more updated into the way that I'm creating things for digital art. And I'd love to know what you think. And actually, I'm feeling like I need to adjust that logo color-wise too. While we're here, where's that logo? And by the way, name your layers. Don't be like Rob. Name your layers. So I play with the blending modes at first. I don't know if I like that. Maybe that. Or I could mix the two, actually. I could copy this again, set one to overlay, and then push back the opacity a little bit. So yeah, you can also do that. You can copy and blend your layers and your blending modes together. So again, thanks very much for watching. More content on the way very soon. As always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and bye for now.